So today's webinar is Understanding the Highway Code and Recent Changes. I will be your host for today, and I am the chair and founder of the Older Drivers Forum. I'm also a retired police officer, spending 27 years of my service as roads policing or traffic officer, I always used to say. So I'm real passionate about everything to do with cars and motorbikes. So before we start our webinar today, I'm just going to go through and let you know what the itinerary for today's is. So first, we're going to have a talk from the Warwickshire Road Safety Team, just explaining about why we're doing this today. We'll then have an input from myself, leading you through about the Older Drivers Forum and covering things like renewing your license and looking at why eyesight's so important to us with driving. We'll have a talk from Warwickshire's mature assessment about the driving assessment that Warwickshire offer, and that's through the IAM Road Smart. So we'll have a talk all about that. We'll then have a 5-minute break, and during that 5-minute break, I'm going to put up some questions for you, some highway code questions to see how you get on with that. And once we've come back from the 5-minute break, we'll have a few polls to see how you get on with that. And then we will have an extremely useful information input for about half an hour, all about the highway code and the changes that are involved in that as well. So that's the star attraction for us today as well. So we're looking forward to you enjoying today's webinar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to one of our very first speakers today, and that's Kate Castle and Faye Will Fireman from the Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership. So welcome.
So good afternoon. On behalf of Faye and I would like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy and benefit from this webinar, and we'll really look forward to hearing your feedback at the end. So just as a quick introduction for Faye and I, my name is Kate Castle, and I'm the Senior Road Safety Officer for Warwickshire County Council's Road Safety Education team. So our team is responsible for designing, developing and delivering road safety interventions, activities and campaigns right across Warwickshire, with our main aim to help keep Warwickshire's road users as safe as possible. The Road Safety Education team, so the team that I work for, works with stakeholders, key partners from the partnership, communities, schools and workplaces. I'm also going to introduce Faye Wildman to you. So Faye is Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership Coordinator. Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership brings together key partners and presents opportunities for innovative working using international best practice. The partnership is working together to strive to eliminate fatal and serious casualties, thereby creating a safer road environment which will encourage safe, active and sustainable travel. Next slide, please, Rob. So why are we focusing this webinar on mature, experienced drivers just like yourselves? Well, with an ageing population, we want to be proactive ourselves and the partnership and key partners. We want to support individuals to maintain their motoring independence for as long as they can, and that means driving safely. We recognise that being able to drive provides independence, and with this webinar and our mature driver reviews that we offer for free, which will be discussed later, we aim to promote your skills, improve confidence, and offer reassurance to help you or your family members continue to drive safely for as long as possible. Next slide, please, Rob. And finally, if you're looking for further information and advice at the end of this webinar, Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership have funded several first car magazines, specifically developed for mature drivers with many, many years of experience, just like yourselves. These magazines, called Drive On, provide really useful information on saving money, particularly at the pump, which is really important nowadays. They provide further information on the recent changes in the highway code, which are really relevant. And there's even information about child car seats should you be transporting grandchildren or children around. If you'd like further information on Drive On magazines to either access a digital copy or a paper copy, you can email the team roadsafetyeducation@warwickshire.gov.uk, or you can put your name and details at the end of this webinar. And I will hand back to Rob. Thank you, Rob.
That's great. Thank you very much, everybody. Let me just put my camera back on so you can all see me okay. Welcome, everybody. So thank you very much for that wonderful input about Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership. You can really see that they're getting involved in trying to make the road safer for us all. So that's wonderful stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen on another one now. So let me call up another PowerPoint for you. So welcome, everybody. My name, like I said, is Rob Hurd. I am the chair and founder of the Older Drivers Forum. So I'm going to give you a little bit of input about the Older Drivers Forum to start with. So the aim of the Older Drivers Forum is to support and engage the older driver so that we can basically help you carry on driving safely for longer. That's what we want to do, giving you practical and informative advice to do that. Now, we also want to give you understanding what the risks you can have on the road and how you can reduce those risks. So that's one of the things we do within the forum as well. And also we identify and help people understand when is the right time to retire from driving, because some of us carry on driving too long and a lot of people give up too early. So it's just about building up your confidence as well. And also we give advice to family and friends as well, and to medical practitioners and opticians. So to do that, what do? Well, we come up with a three-pronged approach of how we do this. So the first one is how we can raise awareness of all this information to you. The other thing is encouraging yourselves to think about doing voluntary driving assessments, like the one we're going to talk today, which is offered by the IAM Road Smart. And then also we want to encourage you to take regular eyesight tests, because seeing is such a vital thing about driving. So how do we raise awareness? Well, first thing we'd really urge you to do is have an exploratory of our Older Drivers Forum website. And the reason why I say that is that we've got so much information on there to help and support you. There's an advice tab, which if you click on, it has things like the law and the DVLA. So you can renew your driving license by that clicking on there, use that link. Also information about eyesight and medicines, driving with various different medical conditions that may affect you. We've also got a whole load of videos, really useful stuff, from driving at night, turning right out of junctions, driving on motorways if you want to. Lots of videos on there to help and support you. We also, like I said, have information for family and friends and GPs. And also, like I said, we've got information about nighttime driving, what are suitable cars for older drivers. And also, obviously, most relevant today, we've got information about the highway code and all the new changes that are on the highway code as well. We've also got a little cost calculator, because the cost of running a motor vehicle at the moment with petrol and diesel, it's astronomical, isn't it? So we can always look about, is it effective for me still to use my vehicle or not? Or perhaps I can find other forms of transport. So we've got a little cost calculator on there to help you. We also got a little link to the area and courses. So on there, even if you don't live in Warwickshire, you can click on different areas and identify what courses and assessments are available in your area. And like I said, there's a video tab on there. And also we have events. So when we're running new events, we often put them on our events tab. So if you're looking about what we're doing, then have a look on our website as well and follow us as well. And you can do that by, on the front page, you'll see there's a little link to follow me. If you just type in your email address into that when you see it on the front page of the website and push follow, you'll see it. So let's talk about renewing licenses, like I said we would do. Well, at the age of 70, we have to renew, our license will expire. And about 90 days prior to that, we'll be notified by the DVLA that our license is about to expire. And we need to renew our license every 3 years. Or if we've got certain medical conditions, it might be every year or every 2 years. The DVLA will make a decision on that. But like I said, 90 days before your renewal, you'll get one of these little forms pop in through the post to you. It's called a D46P. And this really just encourages you if you want to renew your license. Now, in the renewal, you'll just have to declare if you've got any notifiable medical conditions, and let you know there's about 183 of them. So they're not all listed. So you could always have a look on our website again. It will take you to the link to see if you have one of those conditions that you just need to tell the DVLA about. Now, don't worry. It's not about stopping you driving. They're often just they just need to be aware of some, or they may give some extra conditions on your license. That's all. Also, you need to make sure that you conform to the standards of vision of driving, which is basically 20 meters, but we're going to talk about that in a second. So how do you renew your license? Well, you can do it 3 ways. So one, you can either do it through the gov.uk website, and there's a link on our website to do that. Now, if you've recently had a photo done, or you've got a photo card one, it's even easier, but they can even use your passport photo for doing it as well. Or you could use that form that comes to you in the post, like I said, the D46P, or you could do it by renewing with the D1 form, which you would obtain from your post office. Now, the important thing to remember, if you do it online, it takes a matter of weeks, whereas if you do it written, at the moment, there is quite a delay, and I think some of you might be finding that at the moment. It's quite a delay in processing paper applications. So, can you drive if your license is, if you're going for renewal? Yes, you can. Basically, if you've applied for and renewed your driving license and you've sent that form off, I would always recommend sending it recorded delivery. Then you've got a record of it. Then that entitles you to carry on driving for 12 months on your previous license. Now, that's under a thing called Section 88. Now, to do that, you do need a number of certain things that have to be in place. And one of the most important things is that you haven't been told by someone to cease driving at all. If that's the case, then you obviously couldn't. But you can see on our website, we'll give you more information about when and when you can't continue driving once your applications come in. Now, an important thing to remember, that if you own a camper van or something like that, if you go to renew your license just for the normal forms, then unfortunately you'll lose that C1, which is for medium-sized vehicles, or D1 for minibuses. You'll lose that automatically at the age of 70. Now, to keep that after the age of 70, you need to reapply with different forms, and our website gives you all those. Basically, I think it's a D2 and a D4. One is a medical form that you would need to complete every 3 years as well. So you'll see that on our website as well. So what about driving appraisals? Well, we're big advocates of these. We really think they're so important to help brush up our skills, make sure that we're safe on the road. So like we say, today we're going to be talking about the Warwickshire Mature Driver Review, which is through IAM Road Smart. I won't go too much into it, but it's a very good scheme and very good about helping up and brushing up on people's skills. But there are times when we may have an underlying medical condition that may affect our driving. Now, if that's the case, we recommend you would undertake an assessment at what we call a driving mobility centre. Now, these are all over the country. You go onto our website, you'll have a click on that. And these people are actually specialists in looking at the condition that you've got and maybe setting up your vehicle better so it works better for that and runs much better as an effective way of doing that. So you could have a look at that as well. But they also can give you adaptations that you can fit to your vehicle, like an extra bigger mirror or maybe a ball on your steering wheel. So they're a very good organisation to help with as well. So if those are the two sort of organisations that we would recommend yourselves in Warwickshire to look at. So what about eyesight? It's an essential thing, isn't it, for us all to be able to see when we're driving. And that's why we all must meet these standards of vision when driving. Now, that's basically, you need to be able to read a number plate of 20 meters. Now, that's just under 6 car lengths. So if you can see a number plate at 6 car lengths in good daylight conditions, then that's great. That would give you normally what we call a 612 on the Snellen scale. That's what your optician would usually do. But it's always a good idea to go to the optician and have a brush up with your sight as well, not just look at the car number plate. Also, we need to have an adequate field of vision. That's what they say. Now, as we get older, sometimes we do start to lose our peripheral vision. We may not be able to see things at our side. And that's why it's always important to get checked out by an optician when you're renewing your license. It's a great way, good health thing as well. So as we get older, our eyesight does deteriorate, and often that can happen gradually and often without us realizing. And it's only when we go to an optician we understand that. Now, a lot of older drivers don't like driving at night, and actually it's real common reason for it really. And it's because as we get older, the rods and cones in our eyes just get a little bit tired, like any muscles in our body. And sometimes they're a little bit slower in reacting. So if you were blinded by a set of headlights at night, research has shown that at the age of 15, it would only take you 2 seconds for your sight to go back to seeing normal again. Whereas at the age of 65, it can increase up to 9 seconds. So you can really see as we get older why this tends to happen and why as we get older, we often don't like driving at night because we get blinded by those headlights. Now, we do have a video on our website giving you advice about how we can overcome such things. So have a look at our website about that. But this is important. 33% of people over the age of 40 are affected by these conditions: glaucoma, cataracts, blindness, and what we call age-related macular degeneration. So you can see these are common issues that people often suffer. And I've got a number of photographs on our website which really demonstrate what those conditions look like. Now, this particular one with the car you can see here, we've lost our peripheral vision. And this tends to be what we call glaucoma. This would tend to lose our peripheral vision with glaucoma, which is a common eye condition, certainly as we get older as well. So that's pretty much me talking to you a bit about that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pass you on to our next speaker. So our next speaker this afternoon, his name is Richard Gladman, and he is the head of driving standards for IAM Road Smart. So welcome, Richard. I'll let you share your screen and join in with this course today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And Rob, thank you very much for having me. Richard Gladman, I come from a broadly similar background to Rob, an ex-traffic policeman who then went on to driver training within the police. On retirement, I was recruited by IAM Road Smart to head up their driving and riding standards. When I looked around, obviously we're well known for our advanced driving test, but actually the best thing that we put out there is our mature driver review. And as a former examiner for the organisation, I've conducted a number of mature driver reviews myself. So when Warwickshire County Council got involved with us to provide this mature driver review for free, it was actually quite an exciting opportunity for us. I did go to Warwickshire and was present whilst we filmed some material in relation to it, and had a great day out with the candidates there, one of whom you'll meet during my presentation. So a mature driver review. What is it? Well, it's actually a friendly but impartial view of your driving performance. It's conducted in your own vehicle, and it's conducted over a route that you regularly use. So it should be something that actually tests your driving ability whilst you're well within your comfort zone. You should have an engaging individual beside you who is there to give you that proper, honest opinion of how your driving performance is. So there's no need to feel under any pressure whilst you're doing it, because it will just be an honest opinion. Who's it conducted by? An IAM Road Smart examiner. They usually will come from a police background. Obviously, the police are there deciding how a careful and competent driver performs. So that gives them a really good insight into what they should expect from you. But the examiner may be from our local group background. If they are, they will be very experienced in driving our advanced driving course and also in interacting with people. Other than that, it will be a registered ADI who conducts the assessment on our behalf. That will be somebody who works in a number of areas for IAM Road Smart. And again, you'll get that impartial assessment. The bit on the screen there is just a brief extract from the report. As you can see, it's quite simple. It assesses you in 12 areas, and it gives you a level of competence from excellent through to a safety concern. And then there'll be a verbal debrief, which will be followed up by some additional comments. Some testimonials from people who actually undertook the assessment, and Alex, the second gentleman, was actually there on the day that we did the filming. He was there with his wife Barbara, and we all had an excellent day. And I've got to say that the candidates I saw that day all produced an excellent performance. As you can see, Susan found the experience beneficial, and many thanks to her instructor, who was friendly and informative. It didn't feel like an assessment, more like a friendly drive. And that's what it should feel like if it's conducted properly. And Alex comments that the feedback was superb, and it gave him some extra skills to hopefully carry on motoring for a long period of time. This screen here shows some of the reasons when we did a little bit of research into our mature driver review as to why people undertake it. I'm a certain age and insurance comes up for renewals shortly, so I thought it might be a plus. Partly due to my age, people will question whether I should be driving. So they took the opportunity to get it tested themselves. They thought it was time to have a checkup, as it was 40 years since a test. I mean, we all would love an ongoing opportunity to refresh our driving skills. It doesn't exist at the moment, but this perhaps just gives you it. And due to age and living alone, wanted to stay independent. And that's something that we can all relate to, wanting to stay independent. This last slide here gives a breakdown from an overview of 600 assessments as to where people sat in that development area. And I think it's fair to point out that you know, there were some people that showed a safety concern, but they probably had a niggling doubt themselves. And it was nice that they were given an independent view that, do you know what, it may be the time to start taking some extra steps. Do I need to drive as much? Do I need to drive out of my comfort zone? Or do I need to make that horrible decision and actually stop driving? But it gives somebody else to help you make that informed decision. But as you can see from most of the ones we did, most people are competent, some people are excellent, and a few people needed some extra driving advice. So by identifying that they needed that extra driving advice, we were able to either point them in the direction of the right driving advice, or help them to make sure they could find that. What we've got to bear in mind, though, as Rob described, the two different sorts of driving assessment, and this is the light touch one that you go down yourself, and in no way is this an attempt to take away from the mobility one, where you really do need to get your driving assessed for a medical concern, and we need to conduct some sort of investigation into that medical concern to make sure that you can either come up with a way to correct that and keep you safe and driving, or, as I say, take that step to no longer driving. Great initiative, and hopefully everybody who's on the webinar who hasn't signed up for it will actually look to come and take part in one of these assessments.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, for that. And that really just shows us, doesn't it, and highlights to us why it's important that we think about one of these sort of confidence building light touch appraisals. It's a vital thing that we should all think about. I mean, the biggest thing I've found over the years is competency, and also where people become very complacent about their driving, because as we get older, we often think, well, I've driven for 50, 60 years. I'm perfectly okay. I'm a good driver, which is probably the case, but it's always good to get a little sort of a brush up on your skills to get rid of those bad habits before they become a problem. So in the Older Drivers Forum, we're very much keen in encouraging you to do one of those. And like I said, regular eyesight tests, and get one of those done with an optician, I would recommend, certainly every time you come to renew your license as well. So let's have a look at other things as well then. I'm going to share my screen now, because we're about to take a 5-minute break. Just before we go for a 5-minute break, though, what we're going to do is I'm going to just share my screen with you. We're going to give you some highway code little questions just to see how you get on with these, okay? So have a look at these and see what you think. Now, don't have to answer these right now. I'll put a poll up after our 5 minutes, but the questions are these. When overtaking a cyclist, you either leave 1.5 meters at speeds up to 30, or overtake quickly as much as you can, or leave at least 1 meter of speed, 1 meter at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. And then the second one is about street lamps and parking at night as well. And you can see if a road has street lights but no speed limit signs, what does this generally mean? Well, the speed limit is 20, 30 or 40. So we can see the differences there. Or also, what does this sign mean? We've probably all seen it on our roads now. What does it mean? Does it mean no overtaking, no motor vehicles, or cars and motorcycles? So have a think of that in our next 5-minute break. So let's see how you get on with these highway code quiz questions that I put for you during the break. So I'm going to share you a poll to start with. So the first one is just about overtaking the cyclists. So just have a look at that and tell me what you think about the answers on there then. Just put in what answer. Do you think it's A, B, or C? Have a look at that. Yep, we're all voting well on this at the moment. So just leave you a little bit more time to vote. Here we go. Coming up with stuff at the moment. Yep, leave a little bit more of you to vote as well as we're going on, just to see what your thoughts are. Okay, let's just end that poll there and I will share you the results. So as you can see from the results there, you can see that 89% of you have said you should give 1.5 meters when overtaking and speeds up to 30. You're absolutely right. Well done for that, everybody. And Graham's going to basically explain that a little bit more as we go through in the next section as well. So that's great. So let's have a look at the second question then. That's open for you. So the second question was to do with those street lights, wasn't it? So Let's see how you get on with that one. So the first one was, wasn't it? You know, if a road has street lamps but no speed limit signs, what does this generally mean? Is it a 20? Is it a 30? Or is it a 40? So let's see what your voting are. You're all doing very well at the moment. Lots of good votes coming in. Fantastic, doing very well. Leave it a little bit more longer for you to see how we're getting on with your voting, getting on that. Okay, I'm just going to end the stop on that, and I'll share my results with you as well. And as you can see, 96% of you said it's a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. You're completely right. Well done, everybody, on that. That's an excellent one. So let me have a look at the next one then. That's our final question that we talked about, is that sign then. What did you think that sign was? Okay, what does it mean? Does it mean no overtaking? Does it mean no motor vehicles? Or does it mean cars and motorcycles only? What do you think on this one? Just have a good old vote on this as well. So we're all doing very well at the moment. All doing very well. That's good. I'll leave it a little bit more for you to answer your questions up. Okay, let me share you the results of that. So the results basically have told us that 4% of you said it means no overtaking, no motor vehicles, 69% of you said, and 27% said cars and motorcycles only. Well, the answer is no motor vehicles, okay? That's what it means. And the way to remember it is it's a red circle, which means it's an order sign. So it's something that we must comply with. And we've got a car and a motorcycle, pretty much it's covering most vehicles. So it's no motor vehicles. That's wonderful. So well done, everybody, for taking part in those polls for today. Now, what I'm going to do is just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll invite Graham to come on and share his screen with us and take on the next exciting bit about the highway code and its changes. So over to you, Graham.
Lovely. Well, thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. I've run this highway code sort of update information presentation many times now. And over the years, over the months since the end of January, I've changed it slightly because of really the very interesting feedback we've had and the questions that have come, and it's given me a real idea of the knowledge that people have about it and sort of what levels to go to, really. Just a very quick piece of background. I've been in the driver training industry for about 22 years now. Started off with the 17-year-olds many years ago and worked my way up through all the age groups. And the oldest one I've sat with is 100 years old, and actually on the local roads was pretty good for considering all things being considered. So let's push on. I've put this slide in really as a way to explain what we're going to do, because I mentioned that the questions and the feedback we've had really demonstrates the wide range really of perceptions, knowledge, skills, that type of thing. And of course, as you're all aware, since these changes of the highway code have come in, there has been a lot of sort of conversations, some criticism, some unhappiness, some worries. So really this presentation is to say that they're here, we have to accept them, and let's find ways of dealing with them in the safest manner. So that's what it's aimed at. It's true to say that over 90% of collisions are due to human error. So not every, and also, as I said, not everyone's happy with these changes. So the human error bit, you know, we need concentration to be safe. And then we need, when we are concentrating fully, we need good habits. So often those collisions come when we're not fully concentrating, when maybe we're distracted or impaired in some way. So the aim of the highway code changes is, of course, to protect vulnerable road users. And some of the comments which we may well get during this, the question and answer session after this, very understandable, but they're about, well, shouldn't cyclists, pedestrians, other forms of transport, shouldn't they obey the rules? And my take on it is that we can't do anything about what other people are doing. We have to basically try and drive to the rules and guidelines in the highway code ourselves and look after ourselves. I'm just going to quickly change the view because I've just got some pictures in my way. Yeah, there you go. So we talk about cyclists and pedestrians, but and motorcyclists, but effectively they're all human beings using the road in different ways. And of course, when somebody does something wrong or illegal or silly, we notice that. What we don't notice is the hundreds and hundreds of people around us that are doing a very good job out there. And it's the same for drivers or cyclists. We tend to notice when they cause us a problem. We all have our own perceptions about what should be done in certain situations, and lots of that's based on our knowledge. So as a really important starting point, baseline really, we need to understand fully what the rules and regulations are and how they apply. And that, again, that's what this is designed to do. We tend to blame others for any collisions. That's a human nature thing. We always try and find, surely it can't be our fault. It was because they did so and so. That's natural. We always rate ourselves better than average drivers. We've tried this many, many times, and that makes sense because when we're concentrating, we probably are better than the other people we see around us. But as I said, we only notice then we notice the people that are doing something wrong. But even though we rate ourselves better than the average driver, when we've asked, many people would admit they probably would struggle to pass that very basic driving test that we have to do at 17 years old. So there's a disjoint there somewhere, something's missing. And then if we don't know what's missing, then we're just going to carry on in the same way, which is why the driving assessment appraisal, which we heard about earlier, I would recommend to anybody. We run this down in Hampshire and it's very popular and well worth doing. We all complain about the same things that others do. So if we ask a group of drivers what they hate about other drivers, they have gap fillers, people that drive too close behind, people that don't signal at roundabouts, and so on. But strangely, when you sit with those same people in a car, they tend to do the same thing sometimes without noticing. So it's a bit of self-reflection there. And that's, again, where these appraisals can help. They can point out things that we weren't even aware we were doing in some ways. And when the Transport Research Laboratory did some research into concentration levels, they found that we only concentrate for around about 25% of the time across the board. So, when you're driving later, maybe, or tomorrow, just remember that when you see 100 vehicles around you, probably, or road users around you, probably only 25 of those on average are actually thinking about you, what you're doing, what they're doing. The others are on more on autopilot. And we follow closely on the motorway because we don't like gap fillers. So in other words, we're putting our lives on the line because we don't like people jumping queues. And I've looked into this for many years now, and I believe that's one of the most unbelievable arguments for following closely on the motorway that you can imagine. And I'm happy to explain that later if we have time. And of course, even however well we're driving, we get stressed, and we know that stress is a big factor in way we make decisions and our actions. And this comes in very closely to this guideline in the Highway Code, which I'll sort of mention shortly. We can become ill, we can become tired, distracted, and impaired, and this all makes a difference. So that's the background. Now into the changes. I will talk through all of these, but we're going to go through the hierarchy of road users, the priority at junctions, particularly for pedestrians, but also at cyclists. Safe passing distances have been mentioned already, and we will cover those. And the so-called Dutch reach, the safely opening of vehicle doors. So that's the one we'll start with. What the Highway Code now recommends is that people driving and passengers should open the door using the hand furthest away to the door they are opening. So in other words, they're turning round which almost forces them to look round into that blind spot and the door mirror. And probably it's true to say that the majority of people, even when before they open the door, even if they pay attention to the door mirror, we find that very few actually check that blind spot. And that can be where the pedestrian or the cyclist is hidden. I actually had somebody, I was driving along the road the other day, and a parent had was dropping a child off. So the parents it was a one-way street on the other side, and the child was on my side as I was coming past, luckily very slowly, and the child just flung the door open. So it's not right in front of me. It's not just about the drivers. We have to make sure all our passengers are aware of the dangers there, clearly. And there's a chap demonstrating that. What I found, and I don't know about anybody else, but I found that very few people are actually taking up this advice. There may be a few, but I haven't seen them yet. But I believe what it has done is raise the awareness of the need to look around for those cyclists and those pedestrians. And that can only be a good thing, of course. A word about the hierarchy. I'm sure many of you already know this, but the hierarchy puts the most vulnerable road users, such as people walking, right at the top. And the heavier vehicles, such as the large goods vehicles, passenger vehicles, buses, etc., right at the other end, at the bottom. So that's saying, as we work our way up the priority, we have to give more thought to the people above us in that hierarchy. And we're more likely to get blamed for any collision that happens. We have a greater responsibility. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more as we go along. Safe passing distances we will cover. So this one is allow at least 2 meters to pedestrians or people walking in the road, keep to a low speed. As we saw on the quiz there, the highway code recommends leaving at least 1.5 meters at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour, and increasing that at faster speeds for safety. And when passing people riding horses or driving horse-drawn vehicles, at least 2 meters at speeds of less than 10 miles an hour. And again, we'll mention all of these again. Now, the hierarchy rules, there are 3 rules, new rules. There are other rules as well, which sort of branch out from these, but the 3 hierarchy rules, H1 is just a description, which I've already done. H2 is a rule for all road users other than pedestrians. And this says at a junction, you should, and that word's really important, we're going to cover that in a moment, you should give way to pedestrians crossing or waiting to cross a road into which or from which you are turning. It also points out that only pedestrians may use the pavement. So when you see cyclists or e-scooter riders, for example, coming along quite at a rate of knots along the pavement, we're about to turn into a junction and they're about to cross. Of course, it doesn't mean we can freely knock them off, crash into them, because we still have a duty of care. This is all about driving with due care and attention. And then they come under this hierarchy. We have to pay attention to the more vulnerable road users. Whether we believe they're doing something wrong or not, we still have to look after them, of course. And it's really important, I've found, since I've been doing these presentations, not everybody is aware of the terminology. And this is an important point. So in the highway code, some of the rules start with you should do something, or you should not, or do and do not. So for an example, a zebra crossing, you should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross a zebra crossing. Now, if you don't, and they're on and they stay on the pavement, clearly wanting to cross, and you just ignore that and drive through, you're not breaking any law directly there. If, of course, they step out as you drive through and you have a collision with them, you won't be penalised for going against that particular rule or guidance in the highway code, but you may well be prosecuted for driving without due care and attention or driving dangerously. Again, we'll just reiterate that in a moment. The other thing to mention, of course, is that over the last 2 or 3 years, there are more and more drivers, cyclists, etc., getting dash cams, helmet cams, that type of thing, and even mobile phone footage from pedestrians. And for many, certainly down in where I come from, there are ways that you can put footage in, send it to the police. They will look at that footage, and if they believe there is a case for prosecution for due care and attention or dangerous driving, they may well then act on that. So it's not just if we have an accident as it used to be, really. Now, the other thing is you must give way to pedestrians on a zebra crossing. So that what that's saying, of course, is when they set foot on the crossing, if you don't give way to them, you're breaking the law directly, because that is a law in the highway code. So where it says must not, you would be breaking the law if you go against that. So as I say, that's really important distinction as we go through this. Also want to talk about priority and right of way. Different road users may have priority in certain situations, but not right of way. The highway code never gives right of way in any circumstances. So the picture there, I'm sure you will have seen these situations many times. The white car is governed by the rectangular sign. Rob talked about the shapes of signs being important, and that's an information sign, and it's telling the white driver of the white car that you have priority over oncoming vehicles. Now, that's not right of way, because if the blue car decides they are going to nip through, we clearly then have to give way. Whereas the blue car, he's governed, or he or she are governed by the circular sign with the red border. And that's an order saying, give way to oncoming vehicles. In other words, you must give way to oncoming vehicles. If you go against that, you're breaking the rule in the highway code, which says you must obey traffic signs such as this one. So that's the terminology. And this is just building on what I've just said, really. So it is illegal to drive dangerously. It's illegal to drive without due care and attention. And it's illegal to drive without reasonable consideration for other road users. So when you make decisions, and this will become more apparent when we talk about giving way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross a junction, when you make decisions, it's very difficult for you to tell whether you're acting with due care and attention. There are ways of being sure you are, of course, but if you're just sort of borderline, then the police may go one way or the other if something happens or the footage is sent in. So you have to be very careful about that. And there's the typical, very simplistic diagram of this first bit we're going to talk about, which you should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross at a junction. Now, I live very near quite a busy high street, and before these new rules and regulations came in, the vast majority of vehicle movements and pedestrian movements were safe. Sometimes cars gave way to pedestrians when they're obviously waiting to cross. Sometimes they didn't. Most of the time, pedestrians were happy to wait or felt safer to wait for the vehicles, but sometimes they didn't. And what these new rules do is just formalize it a little bit more to put the emphasis on the car or the vehicle to give way. So on this one, on a quiet looking street, maybe a slow speed limit, 30 miles an hour or less, the blue car is going to turn left. And of course, the big problem is the lady with the yellow t-shirt, because we haven't got eye contact. And when you haven't got eye contact, it's very difficult to tell whether they know you're there. So there's a good chance that lady will walk across. They may have looked round, they may stop and look round, but we have to assume they're going to walk across. So in that simplistic situation, we're almost certainly going to at least be ready to give way. Whereas the chap in the white shirt, in the wheelchair there, we've got eye contact there. We're ready to give way because that's what it says in the highway code. But of course, as with anything, if that chap would rather us go through and wants to wait for a gap in the traffic, then we're not both going to stay stationary for many, many minutes, because of course that causes confusion, frustration, stress, etc., and that's causing other problems. So we have to approach in the way that if we are going to carry on round, because we don't think the pedestrian wants to cross in front of us, we must do so in a safe, slow speed manner and show due care and attention. That's fairly simple for most people at that situation. A little bit more complicated turning right into that road, as the white vehicle is not actually signaling to turn right, but from that type of position, because for a start, we're holding up people behind, and that puts pressure on us. And we know that pressure can force our decisions. Sometimes it shouldn't do, but it can do. We may stop at the turning point, or we may even stop if there's no oncoming traffic across the road to let a pedestrian go. And these are the decisions you have to make at the time, but be very wary at all times to look at what other vehicles are doing before you make that decision. So that's fairly simplistic, but what about if it's a very busy high street with many, many people coming across this junction? Now, clearly, we're not going to be, if we're the blue car, driver of the blue car, we're not going to be sitting there for 25 minutes and looking for a gap in the pedestrians that are crossing, because we know what would happen then. So it's not a case of, this is guidance. We have to bear in mind the effects of stop, and we have to be ready to stop. But the crucial thing is, if we decide that taking everything into account, it's better to carry on, that has to be done at slow speed, of course, and with great care. Multi-lane roundabouts. I've actually got I think a picture on that later to explain that, but it's not just about very well if we give way to a pedestrian waiting to cross at the entrance to a roundabout, but what about vehicles coming up in the other lane? So it gets more complicated. Higher speed roads. Maybe this is a 50-mile-an-hour road. The blue car's coming up, seen the pedestrian approach a little bit late, and although his signal left, decides to stop and hits the brakes a little bit suddenly. And that's, of course, highly dangerous, because the vehicle coming up behind, maybe a bigger vehicle, may not be able to stop, may not be expecting this. And so we have to take account of that. And of course, the only way to really do that is to recognize, plan ahead, and which is what you can learn in these any sort of advanced training is all about planning ahead and thinking, not reacting at the moment. So if you look ahead, you're going to be turning left, you can see there are pedestrians milling around there, so there's always a potential you're going to stop. So you look to see what's behind you, and then your job is to gradually slow those vehicles down, so that if you do have to make a stop, then it's not dangerous there. So again, done in the right manner, even those faster speed roads will work, but are probably less likely to stop for pedestrians there. But you have to follow that guidance. I can't tell anybody what to do, but there are greater dangers, of course, at higher speeds. And children are taught to wait for gaps in the traffic. So don't cross until there's a safe gap. So they may be standing on the pavement, waiting, you stop to let them across, they don't cross. Then it's very tempting to flash your lights or wave them, or to try and hurry them up. And of course, that can be dangerous. We'll talk more about that in a second. So there's all sorts of different situations, including crossroads, where there's movements of traffic every which way. And it's extremely difficult if you're a pedestrian to be looking everywhere when you want to cross a road. So that's really why we should be looking out for pedestrians. This is the one I talked about, the roundabout approach. You can see it's getting dark there, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's a pedestrian on the right waiting to cross. Now, this is my footage. I was driving a few weeks back, and I approached at a speed where I could easily give way, but then I decided not to. And once I knew the pedestrian, I got eye contact, the pedestrian's not going to step out. I had my brake covered just in case. But the reason I decided not to was because as soon as I saw this possibility, I'm looking in that left door mirror, and that's the scene from the left door mirror. A car coming up relatively fast, who probably would not be able to see that pedestrian. And if I stop even by stopping, encouraging that pedestrian to cross, it may be putting the pedestrian in more danger. So I decided not to there. This is the one about flashing headlights. And I know many people, the language of the road, use flashing the headlights or beckoning with the sort of hand quite often to sort situations out. But it can be very confusing. It can be telling people that it's safe and it may not be. It can make them stressed and hurried. They think you're waiting for them. So it's always best to follow the guidance in the highway code. Only flash your headlights to let other road users know you're there. And try and use your position holding back as a sort of a message that if you want to cross, I'm going to wait for you, but I'm not going to encourage you. This is a video, again, which I took in my local area of a good practice. So I'll just run that. The white car coming along there. Now, the chap in the mask, you'll notice on this footage didn't look round, so there's no eye contact. So the white car's done exactly the right thing there, at the right speed, really. Now, it may have been that just a second or so before this footage started, the chap in the mask did look round over his shoulder. And it may have been the white car at that point wasn't signaling, because drivers sometimes have a little bit of a habit of getting a little bit lazy with their signaling. They might put it on just a couple of car lengths back as almost an afterthought. But it's always important to remember that you are actually signaling to pedestrians as much as anybody really on junctions such as this one. So make sure it comes on in plenty of time without being confusing. But as soon as you think it's not confusing anybody, get the signal on. And then if pedestrians do look around, they know you're coming in and they may make other decisions or at least be aware of you. This one is a great example of how not to do it. So this is the other extreme. The red car shown there is actually badly cut in the corner because overtaking a very slow moving vehicle that's in a bit of a queue, just holding back to keep the junction clear. The red car driver, as far as I can see, saw a gap in the oncoming traffic and decided to cut across and nip into that gap. So it's sort of a bit jacky there, so I might just play that again in a minute. But you can see there was a pedestrian there, and the blue car comes round a much more sensible speed. Let's just, yeah, there we go. Now, I'm pretty sure, I don't look at this footage, and it's not my decision to make clearly, but having talked to the people that do, I'm pretty sure that type of footage, particularly if a pedestrian's a little bit closer to the junction there, may well result in due care and attention charge. But that's not my decision. That depends on other factors. It's multifactorial. Now we move on to H3, which is a rule for drivers and motorcyclists. So as I say, we got these three hierarchy rules. This is H3. You should not cut across cyclists, horse riders, or horse-drawn vehicles going ahead when you are turning into or out of a junction, or changing direction or lane, just as you would not turn across the path of another motor vehicle. So we'll move on to that one. Before we talk any more about that particular one, the guidance in the new highway code now is that people are recommended, cyclists are recommended to use the center of their lane where they need to stay safe, and because they're more visible to other road users that way. Approaching and going past a junction is a great example of that. You know, we're not so good as drivers of looking along that curb line, and if somebody's much more of a much bolder position in the center of the lane, then we're more likely to see them. And also in this situation, by moving away from the junction head, I'm sure you've all seen cars that approach junctions, particularly blind junctions, very quickly and almost overhang the junction. And of course, that's much more of a safety margin if a vehicle does that for that cyclist. There are also situations when the highway code says people can ride two abreast. I think there's another slide mentioning when. I'm not a fan of that picture. And the reason for that is, although the cyclist in the sort of orangey red t-shirt is in the center of a lane, it's forcing the cyclist in the blue top to ride a little bit near the junction head, in my view. So although they're visible, I still feel that area driving too close to that giveaway line is a bit of a danger area, really. So rules for cyclists, it's really important to include this because it's clearly not all about drivers. Drivers are, some people say targeted, but the rule is, I think the thing is that drivers of large vehicles can do more damage to the vulnerable pedestrians and cyclists, for example. So it's going to always be, the emphasis is going to be on those. But these are rules for cyclists. Be considerate of the needs of other road users when riding in groups. You can ride two abreast, and it can be safer to do so, particularly in larger groups or when accompanying children or less experienced riders. But then it adds, be aware of drivers behind you and allow them to overtake, for example, moving into single file or stopping when you feel it's safe to let them do so. And that's a really important thing that cyclists should be aware of. So we're all trying to work together. That one there is just, it's rule 72, and it just gives these examples of when the advice is for cyclists to ride more in the center of the lane. It's on quiet roads or streets, slower moving traffic, and at the approach to junctions or road narrowings. And as you see, all of those, it does say about moving back across when it's safe and when there are vehicles needing to overtake you. And that picture's included there really because it just reminds me of, you'll see in some footage we've got coming up, this very example really, this situation is when we do our driver training, and I've sat next to many people over the years and read many reports, generally, and I would go as far as to say 75% is, in my view, generally people are very poor at always looking in that left door mirror when they need to. They may do it occasionally, but they're not very good at doing that out of habit every time before they turn left, or the right one before they turn right, or move left, move right. So sometimes cyclists can be squeezed out. So it's always important using those door mirrors, of course. Now this video here, I'm sorry about the sun, and the where the camera was in my windscreen seems to be a little bit hazy there, but I'm going to play it. You'll see a cyclist come up at a rate of knots on the left. It was stationary traffic when he came up. And as he goes on, can you see there, the car's just cut right in front, and the video conveniently stops at that point. There was no major accident there because I saw the cyclist on the far pavement walking along a few seconds later. But clearly something went wrong there in terms of the driver doing that very important final check the instant before turning. Now, I'm suspected, and I don't know because I didn't actually see what led up to this, but I'm suspecting that because of this very slow moving traffic, that driver made quite a late decision to turn into the road on the right hand side because perhaps they were late and wanted to come round and avoid this traffic. And it backs up, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned it, but it's always risky to make sudden decisions without taking in the information. So it probably was always the case in some ways before the highway code change, but previous to that, it may be if an accident happened there and it went to court, the driver may claim that the cyclist shouldn't have been there, came much too fast, didn't give me time. But now the guidance is very much on the driver to look out for that cyclist. So it's much more likely now that the driver would take a responsibility for that type of collision. And just again, with the door mirror there, this is the same bit of footage, or same bit of road a few seconds earlier. And it's just really to point out, as we're stationary there, we can be looking in those door mirrors. You can see that cyclist is visible for several seconds before he gets to us. So, you know, just updating rather than just, you know, playing the radio, listening to the radio, talking to passengers. Just keep your wits about you all the time when you're in this type of slow moving traffic. I've put there, watch out for Rob and Dom. I made that up, but it's rider on bike, which I've heard used before, but also delivery person on motorbike, because you've got many more sort of young people riding on low-powered motorbikes or scooters with L plates on, doing these home deliveries these days, and many of them don't have much experience, and so that's, you know, you have to watch out. And e-scooter riders, of course, which is another thing. This is just another bit of footage. The grey car or silver car is going a little bit slow, so maybe the cyclist should have had an idea that something's not quite right here as he passes the junction. But the signal came on very late, and clearly that driver didn't check the door mirror. Now, there's an argument to say the cyclist should have been a little bit more wary and been back a little bit. I believe I certainly would as a cyclist, but there's no doubt with the new, certainly with the new highway code, the driver's more likely to take more responsibility if a collision happens there. And of course, if we are to make more use of door mirrors, we might as well have them adjusted. And again, we see a wide range of this, and not everybody gets them adjusted. You know, each time we change drivers in the car, the seat moves forward and back. But the one on the left is how it should be adjusted, because we can just see a little tiny bit of our car, and that minimizes the blind spot area, which I'm sure you're all aware cannot be picked up in the mirror. We need to look, like we said earlier, look over that left shoulder or right shoulder. Whereas the one on the right-hand side, far too much car in that. It's a much too big a blind spot. So that door mirror from the driving position needs to come out more. And then before we finish, just go on to the passing distances. We mentioned leave at least 1.5 meters when overtaking cyclists at low speeds. My question to everybody, and everybody's got a slightly different view on this, and there's no right or wrong answer. I certainly can't advise. The question is, if you come off that roundabout and you're stuck behind that cyclist that's shown in the top picture there, there's a stream of oncoming traffic, even though the road is quite wide. And you decide you cannot give 1.5 meters clearance and be safe from the oncoming traffic. So you then have a choice. You say, well, I can't do that. The highway code says, the advice says, the guidance says I need to leave 1.5 meters. I guess if I do creep past, or go past, I could leave a meter. So I've got all these cars behind me, putting me under pressure. What would we do if it was ourselves? And there's a whole range. Lots of people say, well, that's what the rules are. We're going to stay behind. We have to take account of how frustration builds up, where other people might drive dangerously either at that moment or later on because they're now late for something they were going to. That's a major factor. But we should not overtake in a dangerous manner. And one person said, I know what I'd do. I would nip past as quickly as I can to clear that cyclist quickly. And I can totally understand the reasoning behind that, but that is completely the wrong thing to do, because we mentioned earlier about nipping into gaps. You've got no control over the situation. If a cyclist wobbles at an instant, the speed's too high. So all I can say, I can't advise, but all I can say is if anybody is going to go past that cyclist at less than 1.5 meters, maybe say a meter or so, it has to be done at not much more of a speed than the cyclist is actually doing, because that way almost certainly it would be looked at as taking due care and attention if there was a reason for it. Again, I'm not here to say that's what you have to do. You may recognize the brave chap on the bottom right picture. He's demonstrating the gap of 1.5 meters, so it's with the arm stretched out like that. And the bottom left picture actually is another interesting situation. I'm sure many of you have come across this. You're going out and maybe on a Sunday afternoon or whenever, and there's a group of cyclists. So it's not just about overtaking one safely, because they may be 10 of them or 12 or more. You can overtake maybe 2 or 3, but then you have to wait because an oncoming car turns up and they all come past you on the left and you're back to square one again. The best advice is to, okay, wait until it's safe, until you can see, but sometimes that can go on for miles. So I actually came across this the other day, and well, I'll play the video and try and talk you through it. I've got the car in front, so I'm happy to sit back, and I can't do anything until that car's done something, or we're either going to stay back, or if that car goes, then it'll be up to me to decide if it's safe. Now, clearly at the moment it's not. There are these build outs, this traffic calming along this road. There's about 3 of them. Now you can see as we come around here, the cyclists go up onto the pavement and come back, and that car decides to accelerate through, not really anticipating that. So I'm sort of gently coming around here. Now look at that car overtaking. Now I'm just going to pause it there if I can, because this is important. I don't know, I'm not the driver of that car, and I couldn't see what that driver could see. But when you are approaching a right-hand bend that this seems to be doing here, slight right-hand bend, you can see the curve of the pavement there. It may come out the other end, but certainly on the right-hand bend, you don't get such a good view ahead because of your positioning. You can't see through it unless you can see through the bend. And more than that, the oncoming vehicles can't see you. They can see the cyclist well before they see you. Whereas on the left-hand bend, that would be much safer. So it may be that car could see everything they needed to know, but I was a bit concerned about that. So I thought, well, I won't be doing that particular maneuver. But then, just as I play it through again, sorry, I'll see if I can just, yeah, we'll just go along a little bit. All right, we'll do it from there. So we'll just see that again. So this car's deciding what to do now. Behind me, I didn't mention, as you can't see here, I've got a couple of cars. When we get through to this point here, as we come out into this wider bit here, the car directly behind me is sort of coming out looking to see, it's almost like pressurizing me to go past. I'm not going to react to that, of course, because I got to make a safe decision. And of course, then it decides to just pause a little bit, which it doesn't normally do. So that car's done that there. Yeah, and there's the car, which was slightly hidden because of the shape of the road. Now, the road goes round to the left here. So I think, let me just have a look. I haven't decided to overtake. You'll see I just come out a little bit. There's a bike in the way anyway, so I'm not going to go past here, but I'm looking. And then as that bike pulls in, I can see enough ahead and a landing zone before the red cycle potentially there. And as it goes round to the left, I get an early view of the car coming up. So rather than cut back in, I've stopped wide, checked my door mirror, the bike behind has slowed down, and I'm able to pull back in, which actually stops them coming through. Now, again, I can't advise people what to do, but I was feeling under pressure from the car behind, and I believe I did that in a safe manner. But the police may have a different view, of course. So you have to be very careful. So then just talking about horse riders, at least 2 meters passing distance at speed of less than 10 miles an hour. And also not just overtaking, of course, coming in both directions, because, you can easily frighten horses and you have to be very careful. I was talking yesterday about motorcyclists that tend to have louder engines. So it's not just the close proximity, it's the sound of the engine. So just remember, if you've got a vehicle with a loud engine, just letting the revs drop down as you come up as gently as possible. Just be aware that it may look as if that driver is performing an illegal act by going over that solid white line, but actually in the highway code, for those of you who are not sure, it does say it's legal to overtake a horse doing less than 10 miles an hour. Thank you for your attention. Remember, always drive with due care and attention. And I would recommend anybody, any road user, user to get hold of the highway code, the new book, in the shops or online. And that's it from me. So back over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Graham. That's wonderful. Thanks very much. And thanks for that very informative talk all about the highway code. Lots of useful stuff. Now we're going to go to our Q&A section now. So if you've got some questions that you want to ask the panel today, then please ask. Now we've got a good selection of the speakers already. We've also got Inspector Jem Manford from Warwickshire Police as well. So you can ask a question to him as well. So it's your chance to ask that question. Just go into the Q&A button and type your question in there. And hopefully we'll have time to answer them some questions. So I'll just invite the panel back to join us now so that we can all have them up on the screen, and then I will go through some questions that we've already received. So if you'd like to join us back, please, everybody, that'd be great. Fantastic. See them all popping up now. That's wonderful. And Richard, hopefully he'll join us very shortly. Grand, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. So got a few questions here to ask you all. So let's have a look through some of these questions to start with. So, right. What is the law regarding parking on a pavement, taking into account the side roads are very congested? I think that's probably one going to be for you, Jem, if you would be interested in answering that one.
I'll do my best. Parking on pavement, it's always something that is quite emotive, especially in local areas where things can get tight. We do enforce if we think it's been parked dangerously. The general rule is if there's still enough room to get somebody, a pram or a wheelchair past, then we would normally be okay with that. If it's blocking the whole of the pavement, then technically that is illegal, because the highway goes from hedge line to hedge line or from wall to wall. So that does include the pavement. So if we think it's causing an obstruction, we can take action against it. A lot of it is now covered by local county councils, but the police still do have the power to do it if we think it's in a dangerous position.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. Now, I think this is probably one over to you, Graham, really, is do you advocate that road users should have a full knowledge of the highway code before using any of our roads?
Yeah, I mean, that's best practice. That would be the favorable position, because you see, when we are driving, we're constantly making decisions, and some are very straightforward decisions, some are very complicated. And in my view, the more correct information you got, the more likely you are to make a safe decision. A lot of decisions are based on false information. So you get two drivers doing, or road users doing different things. So yeah, that would definitely be favorable.
Yep.
Certainly.
And actually, I can give a bit of an answer on this as well. Now, we all sign our driving licenses. We all tick that box when we renew it. We all do those things. Now, the question I always ask people is, do you know what it means when you tick that box to renew your license and sign your name on the bottom of your license? Well, what you're actually saying is, I have read the highway code and I fully understand it. So actually, the highway code is our rules for the roads. You know, new drivers, they have to have a highway code test, a theory test before going on the road. It is something that we all need to be aware of. And these new changes are probably the most significant changes that have happened in the highway code since its introduction. So I would really recommend that you have a look at it yourselves, because I think it's invaluable to have a look at it. I see Jem's got his hand up, wants to answer a bit on that. So go for it, Jem.
Yeah, I would just add to that a lot of the prosecutions that we take out for due care and attention or for dangerous driving, we do refer back to the highway code. And if someone is in contravention of the highway code, then that can go a long way to proving a due care. So from that point of view, I would say it is really quite important that you have a good knowledge of the highway code.
Yep, fantastic. And Richard?
Yeah, just to add, and I'm reading it, not making it up, the very first bit of the highway code says it is important that all road users are aware of the highway code and are considerate to other road users and understand their responsibility for the safety of others. So the highway code tells us that we need to know the highway code.
Yeah, and that's a really important one, isn't it? I love the wording all, because so many times it's motorists, isn't it? The people in charge who have to pass a test to get on the road. But we know many cyclists, pedestrians, maybe horse riders, they don't legally have to do that to drive on the road. So it's something that we should all, exactly as Richard said, have a responsibility, because that's where this hierarchy of road users come. Doesn't mean that anybody should have less responsibility. We all have a responsibility to share the roads together and be safe on the roads. So where can I get a highway code? Well, there's several different places you can get it. You could either go to a post office, a newsagent, a lot of them stock them, but also it's online, gov.uk website. There's a link to it there as well. Also have a look at our Older Drivers Forum website. Page on the highway code will take you to the gov.uk website as well to lead you through, and you have different sections on different bits to do with that. Now, just a bit, I think this is probably a question really for me. It says, I applied for my new license back in November by post, and I tried many times online and the system refused to respond. How long can I wait to return to, before I have to wait for the DVLA to get me, return my driving license? Well, it's a common problem. I mean, certainly with the COVID situation that's gone on, a lot of people have applied for their driving license, renewed them online. As I was saying, if you do it electronically, it's much quicker. Do it by paper. If we want to drive an extra vehicle, you remember if we go back on our camper vans or minibuses, we need to do that. It can take a lot longer. They're low on staff at the moment. So we are having some people who's taken up to a year. So what I would really recommend, even though you're written 90 days before your license renewal, there's no reason why you can't apply for your license earlier if you want to. That's just one of the things. You can renew your license really quite early. I'd recommend getting it in early, especially if it's a paper one and you're needing to do some medical stuff with it. Get it in early. That's the best thing to do. One of the things I will go on, someone's asked a question about eyesight. I will remind people about eyesight at the end of the day. At the moment, it is a tick box to say that we can read a number plate at 20 meters. That's purely what it's asking us. No one's checking us. The only legal time we'll ever have our sight checked is actually when we pass our driving test and the examiner says, can you read that number plate at 20 meters? That's the only legal time, unless a police officer stops you and asks you to read a number plate. But you shouldn't just take that as the case. What you should do, like I've really pointed out, is we need to be able to clearly see when driving. So I would really recommend, certainly from the age of around about 70, we undertake an eyesight test at least every 2 years, ideally every year. Our sight can change very quickly, like I said, without us being aware of it. We can not be able to see conditions. And actually, by having regular eyesight tests is really good because they can pick up early other medical conditions that you weren't aware about and allow them to be treated. So it's an all-round good health thing to do. And in fact, I sit on the Older Drivers Task Force, and one of our national recommendations for the government, which we're really pushing forwards, is to the implementation of mandatory eyesight testing when we renew our license. Now that's initially at the age of 70 and every year thereafter, but we're hoping that all drivers should do the same because it's a really important thing that we see when we're driving, isn't it? It really is. So a few other questions then. So anyone in the panel really, is it an offence to cycle on, is it an offence for a cyclist not to ride on a cycle lane? So for example, if we've got all those lovely cycle lanes that the councils are making for us, what if they decide not to ride on those? Is that an offence or do they have to ride on them? Who would like to answer that? Anybody?
I'll have a go.
Go for it.
Basically, no. The council can spend as much money as they like, but cyclists are entitled to ride on the road unless there's something that prohibits a cycle from being on there. And you may get that on a new style dual carriageway and obviously a motorway.
Yeah.
But, we're designed to share nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, some of the ones, certainly where I live, some of our cycle lanes are quite appalling, to be honest. And I wouldn't want to cycle on them anyway, because they're full of potholes. And quite often you have to keep way, give way, give way. And therefore, if you've got those more professional cyclists, they want to keep going. But it's about sharing the roads, as we said before. So going on about cyclists again, Jem, is it necessary for cyclists to wear a fluorescent vest? Is that a legal requirement? What sort of things do they need to have wearing to be bright and be seen, sort of thing?
No, not a legal requirement at all. You'd be pretty daft not to, if I'm totally honest. Likewise with a helmet, there's no legal requirement at the moment to have to wear a helmet on a bike. But for your own safety, why wouldn't you? I don't understand those that don't. So yeah, law-wise, you don't have to, but surely the more visible you can make yourself, the more safety kit you can wear, it's got to be better for you. It seems to make common sense to me.
Yep, absolutely. Great stuff. So, Richard, just one for yourself. How can people, I mean, if someone booked for an IAM Road Smart mature driver assessment, how long does it take really from the booking to actually get an assessment? And would that be in their own car?
Yeah, it would be in their own car, and obviously it would depend on the demand at the time. But I mean, we would look to get somebody in their car having that assessment certainly within 4 weeks. Basically, much sooner than that, if at all possible. Strike while the iron's hot. If people are interested in doing it, get them in the car as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kate?
Hi, Rob. Sorry, I'm just jumping in there as well. I've just picked up on a question to ask whether the mature driver reviews are free. There is actually a charge, but Warwickshire County Council and Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership have fully funded an amount of mature driver reviews. So when you make a booking, if you are a Warwickshire resident, 65 and over, you can qualify for a fully funded free mature driver review. And you can find the link on the Older Drive webinar, or there's a telephone number that you can call, and that's available on the partnership website or Older Drive form. So they are free for Warwickshire residents over 65 plus, but there is a limited amount, so get booking.
Yeah,
so I'd add that in there.
What a wonderful thing to do. That's a really big benefit. I mean, why not? At the end of the day, it's for your best benefit. I would go ahead and do it. I tell you, I'll be booking any moment if I was over 65. I can tell you that. Won't be too long for me, but there we go. So somebody said me to confirm about camper vans, and I totally agree. I talked about that we would need when we get to 70 to renew your license. You'd have to do a certain thing. That's any vehicle over 3.5 tons, basically. So if your camper van's bigger than 3.5 tons, that would be the case. Anything under it, yeah, would be normally covered by your B part in your driving license. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to attention on there. So let's have a look at some other questions that have popped up. Sorry, I just have to read some of these. So why are updates on the highway code not sent to us from the DVLA? Well, they can be. Absolutely. If you go on to the DVLA, if you go on to sort of social media, so if you follow Facebook or you follow Twitter or something like that, you can follow the highway code within that. And actually, if you click on those allowed to follow, you will get those updates from them. So, and also, I know that they're trying to do more when you come to license renewals and when you contact for tax and things like that. They're tending to send some more extra bits through there. But it is our responsibility. Like I said, when we renew our license, you know, certainly over the age of 70, we're renewing a license at least every 3 years. It's a time then when we are ticking that, we should be having a quick look through the highway code to make sure that we're up to date with those. So, sorry, I'm just trying to read some of the questions. So what about, we're talking about motorways then, some people are talking about. So on a motorway, if a car is hogging the middle lane, is it legal to undertake them or not? Jem, I thought that might be a good one for you.
Yeah, so it's illegal to undertake. That's the hard and fast rule there. It is a due care and attention offence to be hogging that middle lane, and you will occasionally see police that have pulled people over to speak to them around that. We try to deal with it by advice, but sometimes we do have to put people to court for due care or for driver improvement schemes for that sort of thing. But at motorway speeds, it's illegal to undertake on the left-hand side of a vehicle. The overtaking is always done on the right-hand side.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And we've had some here.
Jem, can I just add to that? Obviously, because it does cause confusion, the bit in the highway code about in heavy traffic, because it does allow you on a motorway to keep up with traffic moving at a speed in your lane. And you get people who don't know, they're slowing the lane down unnecessarily. But obviously, if you're in congested traffic and you're in the near side lane, you may keep up with the traffic in front of you to assist with the traffic flow. But of course, don't move into the left-hand lane to make that overtake.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. And what about if we're driving? We've seen a lot of press now about e-scooters, things like that. Now, are they legal in Warwickshire? Is anybody like to answer on that about whether e-scooters are legal in Warwickshire? Are they going to be legal? What's happening? Go for it, Kate.
So everyone can jump in here, but in Warwickshire, private e-scooters are not able to be ridden on public roads. Jem, you might want to jump in there. There are some trials going on across the county, but Warwickshire is not taking part in trials. So private e-scooters in Warwickshire cannot be ridden in any public place. Jem, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what you said there. I think there's been some confusion because there were trials in Coventry, which is very close to us, a little while ago, although they've been suspended at the moment. We have dealt with a number of people on e-scooters across the county over the last 12 or 18 months. We do seize them in certain circumstances because they are classed as a motor vehicle. So you do need license, insurance, all the normal stuff you would need for, let's say, a motorbike. And I think there's a real confusion there because, let's face it, you can go to Halfords and buy an e-scooter. And although Halfords, I'm sure, will say they give you all the documentation, all the advice that you need to tell you where you can ride it, it's quite clear to me that there is a massive misunderstanding of where people can use e-scooters. And as Kate said, in Warwickshire, you can't use them in any public space at all. So that's roads, parks, anywhere like that at all. And although we try and take a pragmatic view and we try and advise before we take any further action, if people are persistent or we see something which is particularly dangerous, then we have seized a number of e-scooters and we have prosecuted the riders as well. Just adding on to that, though, I did see something earlier today where I know that the government are looking at whether they're going to legalise e-scooters in some respects with conditions. That's not there yet. It is still at the moment illegal to ride them in public spaces.
Yeah, lovely. And one other thing that we were talking about now, crossing a road, we were talking about having to give way, Graham, to pedestrians who are waiting. We should give way to them if they're waiting, if it's safe to do so. Now, what about if we're driving along a road where we have those crossings where we have dropped curbs? So they're not actually at a junction, but it's like those dropped curbs for normal crossings. Now, and it's not a proper pedestrian crossing, just some dropped curbs. Is that a place we should be giving way, do you know, under this new regulation?
As far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing in the highway codes to say that drivers or cyclists or motorcyclists should give way to pedestrians other than the junctions and the pedestrian crossing, etc. But of course, again, you know, this high street here is a 30-mile-an-hour limit. If I'm going down there at 30 miles an hour, there are constantly pedestrians stepping out. And if I hit one of them, that's my fault. I'm going too fast for the situation. So, you know, it comes under due care and attention again, but there's nothing specific, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, in the highway code to say we have to give way to pedestrians. It's more on them to give way to vehicles.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And if you think about it, it makes sense that we do it at junctions because there's a lot going on there. We've got vehicles maneuvering, turning, this, that, and the other. Whereas on a straight section of road where you've got those dropped ones, that allows the pedestrians certainly plenty of time to see when it's safe to cross, when they've got that gap. So really, I totally agree with Graham. I think that's exactly the case. Yes. So Jem, again, probably, I think obviously popular for you today. Is it legal to cycle on a footpath?
Yeah.
This is always a difficult one because technically, no. Technically, people should not be cycling on a footpath. But again, when I talk to a reasonable view of things, if we have a quiet footpath with a busy road and maybe some children, are we really looking to stop them riding there rather than in the road where it may be more dangerous? Yeah, I don't know. But I guess looking at the strict rules of the road, they shouldn't be riding on the pavement. But we do take each case as it comes. We do have discretion and we would take all that into account. Yeah,
I think that all makes sense, isn't it? It's always, it's about making the right decision in the right circumstances, isn't it? Yeah, fantastic. So, Richard, one of the things we come up about, IAM Road Smart are certainly doing a lot of the mature driver assessments and things like that. Someone's put in a question and said, what about younger drivers? What about people certainly who maybe have got long COVID, now suffer with this fog brain and trying to get their brain back into work? And again, is that something that the IAM can do something with, sort of, you know?
Excellent question, Rob. Obviously, we want to engage with all drivers. Any driver that takes post-test training or refreshers prepares herself better to be on the road. the young drivers are actually notoriously difficult to get to engage with anybody. You know, you get your license and you just want to go away and drive. Unfortunately, we're all guilty of making that ridiculous statement. Now you've passed your test, go away and learn how to drive. And of course, we shouldn't be saying that to people. We should actually be saying, now you've passed your test, stay with us and let's encourage you to learn how to drive properly.
Yeah.
But I mean, on our website, there are a number of various assessments that you can engage with us. You can engage with us and come and have an assessment of your driving. I mean, ultimately, we would love everybody that's on this call to come and join us and be an advanced driver. You know, that prepares you to perhaps then share that skill with other people.
And age isn't a problem there, isn't it? Because we all age differently. I mean, we've got drivers in their 30s and 40s who are no longer fit to drive. We've got drivers in their 90s, 100 who are perfectly fit to drive. So it's all about us aging differently. And that's why, you know, we shouldn't have just age as a limit for ourselves. It's about just getting the right advice and support from the right people. So we've got, you know, Richard and the IAM Road Smart there in Warwickshire. We've got Kate and Faye offering these free assessments. I mean, come on, let's book them up. They should be gone by the end of the day, I reckon, at this rate. So let's really get in there, because I think it's a really important thing. We mustn't become complacent about our abilities. It's just something we must never do, because a car's a lethal weapon. If we're not fully in control of it, then obviously we could be a risk to ourselves and others on the road as well. So just something that we need to be aware of. So I think that's pretty much it where we're getting with most of our questions at the moment. Sorry if I haven't managed to answer all your questions. One last question I will answer, which I know from my road safety work I've done with the Older Drivers Task Force. At what age does most accidents happen? Well, we know that young male drivers, basically pretty much what we call a U-shaped chart, really, is responsibility for collisions at the moment. So it's young male drivers are our highest risk for us. They're what we call our risk takers. And then unfortunately, when we come down to middle age, we become our safest. And when we get over the age of 70, things can slightly deteriorate, usually down to our reactions, usually down to maybe a medical condition or something like that. But that's not on all of us. We could all age differently, like I said. So it's about making sure that we are safe. But obviously, young male drivers are our highest risk, and that's pretty much the same across the whole of the UK. Middle age, we're our safest. Older drivers, sometimes we can get, certainly, unfortunately, more serious incidents and collisions occur because we become more frailer as we get a bit older. So that sometimes becomes the case. So I think that's it for us for today. Thank you ever so much for taking part in today's course. I'd like to say a big thank you to our speakers today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Like I said, this is recorded. It will be on our website. So that will be in the next couple of days. Don't take this as the only input you get. We run regular webinars that we have out there. There's lots of pre-recorded ones on our website under webinars, under the events tab on our website as well. Do think about doing a course. At the end of the day, like we said, they're free in Warwickshire. I mean, why not? And a regular eyesight test at the end of the day. We're all here because we want to keep you driving safely for longer. And that's what we want to do and help and support. But lastly, I'd just like to say thank you very much to all our speakers for today. Hopefully you've got some interest from that. Please drive safely and look after yourselves. Goodbye, everybody.